Hello and welcome. We will be starting very shortly. It is just now 6:30, so we'll give some time for folks to join the Zoom and then we'll get going. Hello, and thank you for joining us at this board workshop for the South Liberty School Board. I am not calling the meeting to order now because we have already called it to order prior to our executive session, which took place for 90 minutes from 5 o'clock to 6:30 in order to discuss real estate and ongoing negotiations. So that being said, we'll move directly on to the land acknowledgement. Director Jackson.
Thank you. We have a written land acknowledgement, South Liberty School District, and it is posted in this room and online on our website. Our written land acknowledgement is only part of what land acknowledgement means in this district. I would say that the practice of acknowledgement involves not only what we say, but also what we do, how we learn, how we connect with one another and with place. And we've had some in-depth school board meeting discussions with community about our practice around land acknowledgement. And one of the things that we expressed perhaps a year ago was an openness to having community volunteers who might read this acknowledgement or a version that feels true for them at a meeting. So I want to restate that people who are interested in exploring that potential can email me at majackson.sw.wednet.edu. And I just want to express that we are on Indigenous land. This is the land of the Snohomish people and of the tribes of the Coast Salish, traditional speakers of the Lushootseed family of languages. Some of the people of this place were signatories to the Treaty of Point Elliott and now associated with the Tulalip tribes. Some still live here and are members of our community. And across North America and globally, Indigenous people are some of the most powerful educators there ever have been and ever will be. So it's an honor to have them among us. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jackson. A reminder that this is a board workshop at which we invite, request, and appreciate the involvement of community members in discussion on the topics on the agenda when they are on the agenda. If you are in person and would like to say something, please just raise a hand. We'll get a mic to you so that those online or those listening later can hear. And the first time you speak, please state your name and generally the community that you live in. If you are online and would like to, on the Zoom call, there are currently 4 folks, and would like to chime in on the agenda item under discussion at the time, please start by entering your name and location under the Q&A function, and then type up what you'd like to say, just so I know that there's someone who wants to say something on the topic at hand and don't continue forward and get beyond what you want to comment on. Also, please do put in complete ideas, not just I agree with that, because it's entirely possible, even probable, that we will have moved on at least 1, probably 2 topics by the time I get a chance to read it. And so we won't know exactly what you were agreeing with at the time. With that being said, we will move directly into our workshop format. And the first point is Support Staff Appreciation Week. I will turn it over to Dr. Moshe first.
As we all know, our support staff in the district are classified staff. We couldn't function without those folks. They support our students, whether it's on the bus, in the cafeteria, as paraprofessionals in classrooms, our custodial staff, our business office staff. There are so many people who support the students of our district other than classroom teachers. It's our time to honor all of those folks who do that work. And on behalf of the district, as a token to say thank you, on Pi Day, on Friday, pies will be delivered to every staff room across the district as a thank you, a small token of our appreciation for all the work they do on a regular basis.
Thank you. Yeah, the education support professionals are usually the first person that students see and the last person that they see during the day. And it's impossible to, and also the first person that any family member who comes into the district sees. It's impossible to overstate the impact that they have on both the students and the community. So I hope that we express our appreciation for them beyond this week. I hope that they feel that because they are appreciated this week, especially because it is their week, but also throughout the year. Okay, we'll move on to point B and again to Dr. Moshe.
The board has, for the past several years, supported the survey that goes out to parents, students, and staff in the district, and it is open through March 25th, and there are specific links for staff that went into their mailbox. Students will be filling out the survey during particular periods of time that principals have outlined in their buildings, and it has gone home to families. So hopefully we will get a wide response, as the more folks who respond, the better the survey results in terms of our picture of how people are feeling about what's happening in the district. So just wanted to make sure that we brought that to folks' attention to please complete that survey so that we can take a look at results in April.
And thank you. And I know that the board takes these survey results very seriously. We bake them into the goals and checkpoints for our goals to the superintendent, which then are passed on to the principals for the various schools and then into the classrooms and the hallways of the schools as well. So these are very important. This is very important feedback and data points for the board to work with. And I know the administrators as well. So thank you very much. It does take some time. Set aside 5-10 minutes. It takes some time, but it's very worthwhile for us to have that information. Thank you. And now we get to the point where hopefully we will have some discussion to be had. Sadly, it's gone by so quickly, but it's almost time for Representative McKnight to finish his time as a student representative on the board. And we'll be looking to find someone to take over that appointed role on the board for 2 years. And so we want to talk about the process and the timing.
Quick question. So Carter, with your recent appointment to the state, how long does that term run?
It doesn't really have like a defined like term limit, but I plan to stay there until there's another election, which I hope to do like in the spring or fall.
Next spring? Or
This spring or next fall.
And we can keep you on as a student representative emeritus if you need that for the position at WASA.
I don't think so. I just want to make sure that they actually have an election over there. But yeah, I don't think that needs to be.
I didn't figure,
necessary.
but let us know. So with that, I want to open it up particularly to our student representatives and the students who are here with us as well, but also to the administrators who actually work through this process with the student representatives. Did this process work for you and for the board last time, so 2 years ago?
Yeah, so I think it's important to clarify. So Carter is the one that the board selected.
Yes.
So that was the interview in front of the board. I think we had 5 candidates that year.
Yes.
And then the reason we have the difference between how Callahan was selected by a group of peers versus Carter being selected by the board was so that we can ensure that we're getting a differentiation of viewpoints.
Those roles.
I would just like to add my recollection, which was that we worked with input from student representatives to make the process for both the board appointment and the student election as equitable as possible and as appealing as possible to students with a range of lived experiences. And I think that we instituted practices like offering board member support in the application process to help alleviate any barrier to students who felt that the written application was an inappropriate format for their delivery. I believe we also added a video application option. And I just wanted to ask Mr. McKnight, when you applied, did you feel invited into the process and supported through the process as an applicant?
I think so, honestly, yeah. I liked how there was structure to it. It was there's a deadline for the due date for the packet thing. Here's when you get your packet. Here's when the application for that is. Here's when you do that, and then you have the interviews on this day, and then on this day it'll be decided. I think you provide that very like structural clarity to the process. It makes it very appealing to students because they don't have to worry about like they know they have all the information.
Mhm.
I think that's really useful for sure. As long as we're clear on that, I think it'll be that's the most important thing.
I'm curious to know if you've thought about this yet, how you plan to, offer kids to come into the fold as possible applicants, and how we can support you in that process.
I think we're definitely gonna have a couple Instagram posts because that reaches a lot of students. I know me and Callahan also talked about going around and doing forum style, like auditorium. In the auditorium, we have 1 or 2 classes come in, and we can come talk to them. So then, with this kind of format, we could give it to the freshmen and sophomores and say, "Hey, apply for this. It's coming up." I think that would be a good method. Going to like Model UN and just like groups that are interested in this kind of activism, and yeah.
Up on the screen is anticipating this discussion. This is basically what we did for the time when Carter was selected. We've obviously changed the dates, and that's flexible, but we just put some dates in there for the board so that you can consider, is that what you want? I know it may be hard for folks to see, but again, the way we did it last time is what I'm reporting. So you have to be seeking a diploma at the high school or through SWA, a rising, an 8th to 11th grade. So a current 8th to 11th grader, at least a 2.0 GPA, application packet, form, personal statement, signature of a parent saying, yes, my student is permitted to apply, and then a commitment to attend. And the timeline is to the principal by April 7th. So that's basically a month from now or right after break. And then school board April 9th workshop. And then you would select. And Carter's last meeting would be the second meeting in May. And then the new student rep would start
That
in the
meeting.
first meeting in June or
Which
that meeting?
We had the overlap, so we had 3 student reps for that business meeting.
Okay,
Because
So-
Carter gets to lead the meeting, right?
right.
So the 14th is my final meeting, just to
Uh,
clarify.
Of June.
No, the
Business meeting.
May business meeting.
Right.
Yeah, so
That's-
May
28th.
28th.
May 28th
Yeah.
business meeting, right.
And you get to lead it.
No, I think it would, I know, this is saying it's April 23rd is the last business.
That's way too early.
Yeah, that's
No,
way too early.
that's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it,
yeah.
May 27th, not 2027, which is up there.
We're keeping you forever.
Right.
So that tells me we actually have some more time in this timeline.
Yeah, you can set it up any way you'd like. This was our
Yeah.
suggestion right here.
I remember this because I remember having Dylan in early June and having to, not having to, having the opportunity to show up to do the student rep interviews with what was he, 4 days old?
Yeah, we've changed it since that time.
Yes. 'Cause we
He's now
needed to
what,
meet
7 years
Corin.
old?
He is almost 7. But I feel like May being the final board meeting seems early.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
So
'cause
that's what we've been
The
doing
June meeting
previously.
is after students are out of school.
That's
That's
right.
why.
Okay.
And it's a
Yeah.
workshop. And then the second meeting in June is your superintendent transition.
Yeah.
So that's
Gotcha.
why
No, that
this
makes
timing.
sense. That makes sense.
So that says that the May 28th business meeting would be the last one for Carter and the first one for the new student rep, which actually
Wait,
says
what
we've
day
got
again? Was
May 28th,
Okay.
which actually tells us we've got an extra month in this timeline that compared to what we currently have. So we could do the interviews May 14th.
Absolutely. Whatever you choose.
So to give y'all more time to rustle up more candidates.
And I think just from my perspective, candidates that I would be interested in considering applying would be those who participate in our less traditional pathways. So SWIA, Running Start, Snow Isle, those who receive special education services, those who touch those programs that aren't always at the center of our voice. So if there is a student who feels like they have capacity and interest that is part of those programs, that would be a really great voice to bring to the table from my perspective.
Dr. Joe, will you scroll up, please? Other way. Yeah, right there, the qualifications. I recall us spending some time tweaking these and trying to strike a balance between ensuring that a candidate would have success in the role, but not narrowing it too much so that, like Director Down said, we could pull from a large diversity of candidates. And so I just want to quickly revisit this and make sure that, or see if everyone feels like we struck that balance right, or if there are other qualifications we would want to add or relax.
My recollection of this process is that we chose the 2.0 GPA because we want to recognize that the student representative is a student first. And if they're below that, we want them to focus on being a student.
I also vaguely recall some discussion around the signed acknowledgement by a parent or guardian and the recollection that we have a policy that would basically exempt students from that requirement if they are unaccompanied.
Yeah, I believe that there is policy about basically becoming your own guardian. Yeah. So in that case, they would sign it themselves.
And then for the interview, wait, what day is that then?
That
In this
then would
timeline.
be the May 14th.
And I
Okay.
would imagine that the packet submission deadline could be moved out a week or two, maybe even as late as May 1st or so.
So the packet's going to the principal
Right.
on April 7th. When do you want it due?
Does the principal want 5 weeks with the packet before the school board interviews?
Doesn't matter.
I'm not
Right.
sure what needs to happen to the packet between principal eyes and board
It's so
interviews.
that the students can promote it and hand out the packet. That's why
Oh.
it goes that early.
I thought,
Oh,
to me,
sorry.
that looks like the application is due from the student to the principal.
That's how I read it too.
Oh.
So I would just add another bullet saying packet due May 1st.
I think the bullet, student application packet due to principal by May 1st.
Is it saying that we have to create the packet?
We have
Okay,
a
okay.
packet. Yeah, we have a packet.
Yeah, I think because those two were originally,
Gotcha. No,
Only a
I-
week
I
apart?
wasn't following. Yeah. Yep. So let
John, you
me-
were going to say something.
I'm looking at my calendar right now. Hang on. Yeah, April 7th, I think was way too soon because remember, we have spring break too. So that takes a week away.
How about May 5th?
Yeah, I'm looking,
That's a week,
it'd be nice to give it to the board a week ahead of time.
right? So let's
Let's
say
do
May
that.
Yes,
5th.
please.
How about May the 4th?
May the 4th be with you.
May
And-
4th is a Sunday.
It is.
Shucks.
So May 5th it is.
I tried to throw you a bone there, Director Williford.
I
About
appreciate
May 4th at 11:59 p.m. with no late
No, we do
penalty.
not want to encourage them to be up at 11:59.
So now a question for the board. We had asked, the packet contains, specific questions from the answer in writing or video. And do you all feel like those were questions that elicited the type of feedback and data that helped us make a good decision?
I think I would take your question and counter it to Carter and Callahan with, do you feel like the packet prepared you well for the role we brought you into?
I have to remember 2 years ago.
I liked the formality of it. I think it really it prepared me for my interview, I guess, which is the big thing with that. I can see for Callahan it might not be as useful because there wasn't an interview in that situation. But for me, at least, it was like I was preparing my thoughts and really collectivizing on like, here's what I'd actually be as a student rep. And then when I went into my interview, I kind of was like pulling from the packet, at least in my brain, you know. I had my thoughts centralized after the packet, which made me more coherent in my interview.
Did we accurately reflect what you were in for?
Yeah.
Okay, then Director Greenhair, my response would be, yes, our questions are good.
Well, if it ain't broke, then let's not fix it.
I don't really remember the packet at all, honestly.
You
Yeah,
would know
it's-
if it didn't prepare you well for this.
I just remember the feelings associated with the packet.
And Callahan, do you have
if you
memories?
If you didn't have feelings of betrayal after actually coming into the role and realizing what was going on, that's a really strong sign that we're on the right track.
I had a question about 11th graders applying because it's a 2-year position, right? So they'd be 12th graders for the year. So does it become a 1-year position for them? And
Yes,
then
it
when we
does.
go through the next one would be appointed for another year?
We would actually bring on 2 the next year if that were the case. We would appoint another one for the remainder of that 2-year term and have the student body elect someone for a 2-year term.
I've always kind of had really not liking that 11th grade idea because I understand wanting to include people who hadn't applied earlier, but it's kind of like you had freshman and sophomore year to apply, and then 11th grade, and it's kind of, it throws off the system, and you end up with now a 1-year term and then a 2-year term. Now you have 2 completely new students. The institutional like knowledge is kind of lost. Like imagine if you guys all suddenly disappeared and then a whole new group rolled in. Would it be nearly as effective as a school board?
Well, Carter, we have done that. And this is not the board I started with. And here's what I would also say is that some people have their civic awakenings in between sophomore and junior year.
I would add that there may be students moving into the district. There may be students for whom life circumstances did not allow volunteerism prior to junior year. Students who have a growing sense of independence and choice around how they spend their time. And that for students for whom arriving at the ability to participate in this way is later in life, it might be a mutually beneficial arrangement. I would also say maybe we should standardize a practice of inviting if a person joins us in their 12th grade year, or I should say at the end of their 11th grade year for 12th grade, we might presume to invite them to stay on for basically what would become a 3-year term so that we aren't resetting 1 year after the arrival of that student.
Invite the other representative.
Right. So hypothetically, so here's a hypothetical. Let's say in May we get somebody who's a rising senior. The following year we get a student election, and then the rising senior graduates. How would we deal with? Would we start somebody for a 1-year term, or would we start somebody for a 3-year term? Because if we started somebody I just don't want to get in the situation where we're bringing somebody in for a 2-year term because then we're appointing and electing at the same time. But I also don't want to get into the situation where we're forcing somebody to have a 1-year term because the person before them was a senior. So I'm wondering if we might.
But they would be able to apply again.
Could they apply to stay
Yeah,
on?
They could
I,
apply to
I
stay
just
on.
wanted
I
to
would see that,
normalize
yeah.
that they'd be invited to
Just
apply to
be
stay
like a
on.
regular board election.
That's what I was going to say, is it feels like at that point, it's the
Sure.
same procedure that we would have. You bring someone in to
Okay.
fill the remainder of the term.
Be what you,
Okay.
Joe, and Ann did.
Yep, fair. Okay.
I mean, I'll just say as a student, I really kind of take pride in our system of having the alternating system.
Mm.
I think that's really one of our core strengths as student reps here. And yeah, that's why this 1 year terms kind of worry me a little bit, but
So go ahead.
Do you have any models from other school districts that, maybe offer access to applying from 8th grade to 10th grade? Or what have you seen in other school districts or talked to other students about around how their appointees or voted in reps are timed and aligned?
I feel like there's typically in a lot of schools there's a senior rep and a junior rep, so that like eliminates sophomore and 8th grade and 9th grade. So that doesn't matter. But there's usually someone who's older and has been on the board initially, and so I think having someone with like knowledge about the position and then someone without knowledge about the position, having that like aligned is really good. And so I think not having 11th grade would allow that.
I think there's also a lot of districts that do 1 year terms just across the board. And it's a new student rep every year.
So I would like to put out a thought that, did we do this? And this is an honest question because I don't remember. Did we do this because we were concerned we would not have enough applicants and we wanted it open to the widest possible group?
I don't think it was because we didn't think we were going to have enough applicants. We've
Okay.
had multiple years now where I don't think we've had a single applicant in at least 6 years.
Representative Gamerick was a sole applicant.
Yeah. So, and that was 6 years ago.
Oh goodness, was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
It was.
so I think, that's maybe 7.
Yeah.
I recall it being a little bit more recent because
5?
Yeah.
she was not yet on the
5.
board when I started 5
Yeah.
years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah, that was 4 years ago.
there's going to be applicants this
Yeah.
time.
So-
The position has been more widely publicized than it literally ever has been. And I think possibly the history of the school, we've been going around to the advisories and our position, like during the time of the superintendent search, at least, people were coming up and like talking to me at least because like they knew we were student reps and like the student rep, it became very relevant to students. So I think there's definitely going to be applicants for sure.
I think that the student reps we've had recently have provided really good examples for the student body of what the student reps can do. And I put a lot of the kudos on y'all for the fact that I'm not worried about applicants either.
So given all the complication that a rising senior rep would create, I personally feel that if I was deliberating amongst candidates and one of them was included, I would take that into consideration in addition to their merits.
Yep.
And so given that we plan on having numerous candidates to choose from, perhaps we eliminate that problem from the board's deliberation ahead of time and not set those students up for a situation where they're not allowed to compete on their merits alone because of this complication.
An alternate approach would be to add that we invite applications from 8th through 10th grades at the time of application or from 11th graders with extenuating circumstances. And such as, just moved into the district or life has changed.
I think that we not get sucked into the weeds about a problem that we don't even know is going to exist. And I think we leave the system as it is because it has always worked well for us. And similar to our hiring practices, what this conversation reminds me of is what a lot of military spouses go through, where people have conversations about whether or not to hire them because they may or may not get moved. And that is an illegal consideration in hiring. And so I think if we get a 12th grade student rep who we get for a year who contributes like our student reps have contributed and we get them for a year, then that's fantastic and that's wonderful and we will learn and grow from them and we will reset. And if we don't and we get a 2-year rep, great.
I appreciate that perspective. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got timing, we've got no necessary changes. Anything else? I'm going to check Zoom to see if there's anyone, there's been no Q&A there. Anything else on this item?
Just that final bullet point about May 28th being the final meeting of the term. It might be worth expressing that that is the final meeting of the current outgoing representative's term and the first meeting of the incoming representative's term. Otherwise, it may make people think it's May 28th, 2027.
Ah. Yeah. Well, and that also codifies the one meeting where we have 3 student reps. Okay.
One more question. Are ready to have this be out now? Publicized now? Should I put up on the website? So that's where the kids
Are
can,
our student reps ready to start fielding questions and recruiting?
I think so, yeah.
yeah, I'll put a button on the board page. That's pretty-
Excellent.
You should add me and Callahan's emails so for people who have questions on it.
I would say not to the publicly presented one, but to any communication to students, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to put any student emails out on a public facing website. Was there a comment over there or did that cover it?
But we'll make sure it goes out to the students on Parent Square.
Yes.
And then with that, your emails can be in there.
Yeah.
But on the website, I'll still put the link to this form without emails.
And I am happy to work with anyone who wants to have a board member work through the application with them. I'm sure that other board members are too. I'm just putting that out there.
Ditto.
And just to be clear, when we talk about the packet, it's not a packet anymore. It's really just this form and they attach their essay and
Excellent. Okay, we will move on to the next and final item on our agenda for tonight, which is Resolution 693, the Climate Policy Committee. This is a resolution that I put together based on several example resolutions that I found in relevant searches to other school districts and other organizations. Use the resolution 692 to get the format that Ms. Maccaro uses for resolutions here. So this is our opportunity to discuss not only the whereases, which basically just set up the reason that we're doing this. So the impact that the climate is having on the country and what that has, the impact that has on students and school districts, and then goes through to the therefores, or therefore at the end, the actual resolution setting up or directing the superintendent to set up a committee or to staff a committee. Any comments, discussion, debate?
I wonder about using the United States of America in lieu of America, since America is a couple of continents.
I also am wondering if we could switch children represent to youth represent and or students.
I'm also wondering who the 3% of climate scientists are that don't think climate change is a human activity caused issue.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My name's Reed. I'm a current USL member and freshman at South Whidbey. I was reading this last night, and the timeline says 6 to 12 months, and I was talking about it with other USL members, and we were wondering if we could switch to 4 to 8 or 6 to 8, because that gives the board time to talk with the new superintendent, which I thought was one of the key important things for you guys. And I really appreciate you guys making this and being open to it. And I was wondering if, yeah, we could change the timeline to make it a little more urgent.
I'd love to speak to that if I may. I was actually reflecting on the timeline, wondering if it was too brief because I think that this board and the students really want a policy that will be impactful and will lead to sustained positive change. And I was doing a little bit of calculating, and if we look at 6 months, we'd basically be adopting a policy about a month and a half into the school year, which would basically put us at, 5 or 6 weeks into the new superintendent's time in the buildings. I don't know that there would have been time for this committee to actually do the ground truthing that's required in the buildings to understand the context in which this policy is being adopted, much less what it seeks to achieve. And, if we look at the new superintendent's volume of work coming into a new role in a new district, I'm just concerned that the policies adopted by this committee's work would be totally divorced from reality if they were to be as early as 6 months. I think 12 months is a more realistic goal because that would give the majority of a school year for students, staff, the committee members, the new superintendent, and any associated support team members to really assess our climate mitigation strategies, our climate adaptation strategies, and contextualize them with what's already happening. So I appreciate the sense of urgency, but I think that sometimes urgency can become haste, and haste can be the enemy of doing work with integrity and long-range positive outcomes.
Yeah, I feel like I have a couple things to say. I'm Desiree. I'm a USL member, also a junior in high school. And I feel like in our recent presentation, we said just to get the committee going and not, like, obviously, at first for everything, we kind of just get it started and progress more. And also, I feel like if we push it towards 12 months, then we'll just kind of put it on the back burner and like, oh, we have 12 months to do this. We don't need to work on this now. So
I'll also say, looking at committee work, when you say 6 to 12 months, what you're really saying is 12 months. That's going to be a 12-month long thing, and that really can just make things drag on. And then you start getting to the point in the committee where no one can meet. You miss a couple months of meetings, and it's just like you can end up with that like you have so long. Why are we going to meet urgently on this if we have 12 whole months to do it? I feel like we could move to more like 6 to 8 months. Then we going in half of a year, and it doesn't mean we can't adapt the climate policy, but we simply are getting something down, at least. And I think we already do have. I know USL in the past has actually drafted the climate policy with Drew Greenhair and Marnie, but I know that's not complete. But the main thing on this climate policy, a lot of the background work is already done for it. The main thing is just the audit, which I understand would be a lot, but that's like the goal there. So it's kind of, there's a lot of background done for it, I think.
I have a suggestion perhaps that might be able to help us here. I agree with Director Jackson about not wanting to go too fast, that we don't come up with targets that are going to be in the best long-term interest. And I do agree with the principle where the longer you give yourself, the more procrastination you do. So perhaps we require the committee, we would say 6 to 12 months, and then we would add something like with a interim progress report due to the board no later than 6 months. So at least we get a halfway mark where we've heard what's happened to date, and the board can then issue course corrections if instead of the committee going or the committee going quiet for an entire year before we hear anything from them.
And I do just want to point out that 6 months from today, it's March 12th, so April, May, June, July, August, September. 6 months from today is a week and a half before school starts. Is that correct?
With a summer break and
with a summer
graduation.
break. So there would have been no opportunity for staff or student involvement in the process if we were to adopt a policy in 6 months. And I think that that would be contrary to our values around leadership from within.
May I speak?
Any member of the community may.
So climate urgency has been a front burner issue that we have been dealing with, despite the fact that our students are looking for policy, which I appreciate. But this is not new. So we are working on this. So I feel like I can deliver to the board at next meeting a committee draft. I have it in front of me. It's a working draft. I've been working with Becky, the new superintendent, on what we're doing, and I have 2 companies that I'm already working with to see what their proposal is for helping us with an audit on not only our greenhouse gas emissions, but how we can leverage the bond to, as we buy new things, do new things, that we make sure that they're within the parameters. But I guess what I want to say is I appreciate the board talking about 6 to 12 months. I don't particularly mind whether you say 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. The work is already happening. And the committee, putting the committee together and developing committee responsibilities, as was pointed out, we already have a draft of a framework. So phase 1, I have, when I come back to you, phase 1 is going to be put the committee together, and so identify and invite committee members, and that would include student, staffs, administrators, community partners, board members. Define the goals, roles, and responsibilities, conduct the initial assessment. I'm meeting with the second of 2 companies that do this on Friday to talk about, can you deliver? What are the deliverables? So I think at the next meeting, if you adopt this resolution, whether it says 6 months, 12 months, or 2 months, I'm going to come back to you next meeting with a plan for the board to consider. So I don't know that it's necessary for all of the discussion around the procrastination and you're not going to come back to us for a year, and it's just not true. So I would leave the board's resolution alone and trust that next meeting I come back to you with a plan, with a timeline that takes us out. You know, again, I want to also point out that Becky and I were at the National Superintendent's Conference this week, and she specifically went to a session on this very issue and heard from a school board and a company called McKinstry, and talked about setting clear and measurable and attainable goals. They set those goals in 2021 for a duration to 2035. And as they progress in their district, they continue to improve or reduce their footprint and so on. So I feel very comfortable with putting together a timeline that the district can come through on. And I would appreciate it if the board's resolution did give us some breathing room, because we do have a new superintendent coming in, and there are a lot of things that are irons in the fire at this time. So thank you.
Would this committee like go away after the climate policy was finalized?
That would be up to the board after that, theoretically, if they want to keep it going and keep it working on that. We would certainly want to keep improving the policy. It would be a living document that would keep improving as it was needed. And I wouldn't see any reason to get rid of the committee unless
The committee
they wanted to.
is ongoing, and there are many phases to this that to me would take us out several years.
And explicitly, the policy does not have an end date for the committee. It has, they will report back with suggested policy within this timeframe. And
with
that
an
time,
annual reporting out to the board as part of the policy on
That would certainly be a request from the board, or from me, at least. I can't speak for the board as a whole. But that would be a request for me, is the policy would have annual reporting in it and make it clear that it was a living document.
Thanks. Tom Walker, live in Langley, and here in support of USL. And just it's very encouraging to hear what's already happening. And so my only recommendation to add to this would be tell us regularly what's happening. So part of the fear is we're not going to know for 6 months, we're not going to know for 12 months, and then it'll disappear. That's the way it, on the surface of it, reads. It's not what you intend. I'm hearing that, which is very encouraging. So maybe could we hear briefly at each board meeting what's happening? That would be useful. Or it could be in writing or something, so that we can see that there's progress being made.
So I think that's a good idea. I don't know that I would do it every board meeting, just because they might have one meeting between the board meetings, if that. But as the board chair, I have latitude on what goes on the agenda. And I could certainly ask for reports from the committee before then.
Well, I think if
on
we do
progress.
that, then for fairness, we would need to ask all of our committees
Mhm.
for that. And so I think I wouldn't make a commitment to that at this point in time. I think we need to look at how many committees do we have across the district, because there are several. And I think that, to speak to what Dr. Moshe said, we do this work, and we are a very transparent district. We have opportunities for people to connect. And I think that rather than putting something on a board agenda that may take, 10, 15 minutes every meeting to report out on all the work of every committee, plus the workload that adds to the committees to make sure the board has the report to report out. If you have questions about how the committee is going, I would encourage you to reach out to the committee lead, or to reach out to a person at the district and just go directly to the source. I think that there is a feeling that we as the board, if it doesn't come from us, it's not official, it's not really happening, and that's not true. We have a lot of really hardworking people in this district who do some really great work that are very open to answering questions from the public.
I would be open to having a more passive role in that. If the committee has something they want to particularly share with the community, having them a member come to me and ask to have it put on the agenda. Yeah. So as they progress, they could come in and say, we'd like to report back to the board on what we're doing.
I also think it would be advantageous to have a formalization of our procedure for hearing from committees, and maybe look at our annual schedule and see whether we have a scheduled updates from committees at appropriate intervals.
I have a philosophical question about the paragraph that we're looking at right here. Director Wilford, you had mentioned something to the effect of, I would wish to direct the committee to do such and such. Is this paragraph our chance to do so, or will we get another opportunity to sort of kick them off? Because if it's the former, there are some things I would like to add in here as the board's instruction to the committee.
This is the board's instruction to the committee.
Okay, in which case I would like to add that I would request from the board, that we would request from the committee, that when they suggest policy, it includes measurable goals, or goals in line with the board's own goal best practices that are in one of our policies, 1005, I think, so that the committee will come back with something that we can use to hold the district accountable as a board.
And I think part of the other reason why we would want a more lengthy timeline on this is because we also need to move into strategic planning. And it would be good if the policies that are put forth, especially if they're new adoptions, are in alignment with our strategic plan.
Can we, to me, this resolution is similar to a policy. And if you allow me the opportunity at the next meeting to provide you what would be the equivalent of procedure, which is an outline of what the committee's work would be. And then you respond to that and tweak that rather than put all of your definition in this, if that makes sense.
I feel like the first phrase here, the district will form a committee empowered to explore areas of improvement and opportunity. That encapsulates just about everything I would want this committee to be empowered to do. The second part of that sentence, to reduce the negative impact of South Whitby School District operations and infrastructure on the environment, I feel like that might be too small, but the first part of the sentence is expansive enough that I don't find it limiting. I also think about this committee's opportunity to explore what's working and expand upon what's working in the policy proposal they put forward.
I also would ask of our students, what would it look like for you to think that the district was working to reduce or to thwart the climate issues? What is it that you're not seeing that makes you think that we're not doing it?
I guess what I'm hearing mainly is that right now we're doing we have people that are going to be auditing kind of our school for climate and our emissions and stuff. And those are things that will be sent to you and that actions that our superintendents and you and Dr. Clifford are going to already be taking, which is stuff that's like really good. And I guess what the final piece to that is the climate committee, which is also going to look at ways that it can expand and look upon those things, which is kind of what we're doing here. But then also just the goals for like, what's our end game with this on that, which I see. Yeah.
I'm looking
That
for
makes
the
sense.
specifics, like what do students believe we should be doing that we are not doing that makes you think we're not addressing climate? And that's what I'm looking for. Like what are the things that are so, that would make you understand that we're doing this work?
I think that, starting with like reusable plates was really good and made students recognize like, oh, we're kind of part of this thing that I've seen other places, like I've seen in other areas that I go, and like our school is caring about that. But I also think student and staff education about the climate crisis, not only the physical things that could be applied in our buildings, but like adding it to the staff professional development and student education starting from like all the way from K through 12. I think that would be part of what I, as a USL member, would like.
Thank you. I keep going back to the idea that we don't know what we don't know until we find out. And so having enough time and enough bandwidth to because the environment is going to keep environmenting at whatever level humanity will let it. And so there isn't in 12 months, we will have solved climate change. It's more about in 12 months, we will know what our impact is and how safe. I think what's missing from this paragraph is the piece where we're also building spaces that are safe with safe air for kids to breathe, that climate resilience there. Thank you that. So that's a place where I would be curious. But until we know, for example, is it going to cost more in environmental impact to wash dishes every day than to use the materials we're using that can be composted or recycled? Are we not using materials that can be composted or recycled? Like those are the little micro questions that will make up the bulk of the long-term work this committee is doing. And we'll get to answer some of those questions. How much emissions are we putting out? And I speak from experience because we did this in our building several years ago. And it is also a campus building, the community center auditorium. And we were able to make some very simple changes that made big impact on how students, how our young people interacted with our building. And so part of creating like positive, tangible change becomes knowing what needs to be changed first. And so I'm very curious for this committee to start, really digging into, what's that backwards planning? Where do we start? And in my head, it's we audit what we know and what we don't know.
I think this also goes back to my comment that I had at the presentation of, we also don't want to just create a policy to create a policy. We don't want it to be performative. We want it to do something. And with the question of, what is it that we're not doing? I heard you mention curriculum, and we have a curriculum policy that is very robust that takes into account of that. And I believe, Ms. Phillips, that we're doing a science adoption soon.
At 612, we're looking at OpenSci, which is an open source material. So really it's just looking at what meets our scope and the NGSS science standards. And then materials, which we're looking at sustainability of what's reusable versus can we get creative with what it's asking for. So in the scale of an adoption, it's more of a review of what we have and implementing OpenSci, which is free.
Yep. And so like some of the pieces that you're talking about K-12 curriculum, that's not something we need a climate policy for. What we need is voices on the curriculum adoption committee that care about climate science being in the curriculum. And so that's the part of, we have to know our lane and we have to know where to direct it instead of creating a whole new plate that is climate change policy, climate change resiliency, whatever we're doing. We make sure that that voice is present on all of the plates that already exist. So that's also, if there's a wonder about how do we get that change to move faster, or how do we get our voice to be heard sooner, it's looking at where are conversations happening that you can introduce that perspective. So I would encourage you all to come to the review of the materials for the curriculum adoptions. And I would encourage you to look at those materials from a lens of, is this addressing climate change and teaching students about climate change and teachers as they instruct on those materials in the lane and direction that you want it to. And that is that's a pathway that already exists with timelines that are already in place that have lasting impacts, that doesn't require a new policy. It's joining the bond committee and being part of the bond committee and looking at what materials do we use, what structures do we build, how do we put those things in place, and bringing the voice of environmental sustainability to that committee that already exists.
And some of those questions, many of those questions are being asked in the bond committee. Just to let you guys know what's been going on, in addition to what are the environmental costs of maintaining the things that we build, of cleaning them, of keeping them up, that sort of thing. So,
and the national science standards also address climate change in the curriculum adoptions. And so that's, I think, to kind of rephrase Dr. Moshe's point of view, the question goes to, what is it that we are not communicating that makes students feel as though this isn't a conversation that's already at the table? And that can be a rhetorical question.
I do have a comment from the Q&A, Gwen Gablin from Freeland. Wow, it doesn't sound like this is being student-led. Joe stated she would have something for the board at the next meeting. So not only is it not being student-led, or is the board giving the superintendent direction? It sounds like this is another superintendent-led project being called a student-led project. The information that Joe just shared would have been useful for the student group that showed up to be part of the conversation, and I think the board is wishing they would have known about this. It's so ridiculous. Maybe the board should decide if this is a student-led project to be supported by the board or superintendent, or if this is a superintendent-led project that includes students when it's convenient. I'm going to skip one line here because I believe it does not follow our policy 002 as it is a personal attack. And then you say you want to empower the committee. The committee is students, not the board or the superintendent. And I will just note here that the committee will include one or more students. It will include one or more administrators. It will include 0 to 2 board members. The committee has not been formed yet. That's what this is about. This is about creating a committee and giving it direction.
I would also like to just add that we do have a policy in place about how committees are created.
Mhm.
And that my interpretation of the progression of events has been that members of the administration, student body, teaching staff, board of directors have been in discussion for some time about climate and our district's responsibility to address it more proactively. That students were instrumental in bringing that agenda item forward. We discussed it in February, and that as an outcome of that meeting in February, the superintendent moved forward with board direction to begin outlining what it would be to create a climate policy committee as per our request in dialogue with students. So I want to thank you, Dr. Moshe, for taking what I see as a very practical and correct next step on this work.
And
Director
proactive.
Jackson, I agree with you. And we do have a policy. It's 4110 on committees.
Thank you.
I'd go one step further and commend Dr. Moshe because the board has yet to take action on this, and you've seen you being proactive. It sounds to me like what you're saying is you've already looked into possible greenhouse gas audits for the district, which is probably something that you could have waited for the committee to tell you to go do months down the line. You've already gone about getting bids for getting one. So hopefully, perhaps no student told you to go do that, so that wasn't student led, but I think that's certainly in line with what we would have wanted this committee to do. So
Actually,
I
it
appreciate
was
the speed.
discussed at the last meeting, which is why I took the initiative to do it. And I
Oh,
appreciate
even
you
better.
saying that, you know, it's the superintendent's job to do what the board directs, which is exactly what the superintendent did, despite the comment that we just heard. So I think I'm doing my job.
Sorry. Yeah, I think all the points have been made are obviously understandable. But I just want to clarify that USL obviously doesn't, we understand the pressure and the work, like especially with the new superintendent coming. We just want to clarify that creating this policy isn't just we instantly get things done. Obviously, with every like other thing, like I said, they kind of just progress towards it, and we create it, and we have meetings weekly. We just continue building on to more things we can do. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you guys.
After having heard the discussion this evening about why a 6 to 12 month timeline for bringing forward the suggested policy kind of fits with the cadence of the school year and the start of school and the opportunity for student and staff participation, do you feel like the concerns about the timeline and the urgency have been addressed from your perspectives?
I think so. I appreciate you guys listening to us. And obviously, we're kids and we don't know everything about the South Whidbey School Board and how everything works. So thank you. And I think that like we are driving this because we all feel passionate about this and we are willing to like meet maybe more often than other people in the committee would be willing to meet. And I think that our timeline, just because of how we feel about it, is more urgent than other people's because they're juggling a lot of things. So I think that just creating a committee and then having the first meeting soon and kind of establishing where we're at, and like maybe it's the students can give more and we can almost bounce more ideas off of the administrators and staff in this committee, so we could potentially speed up the timeline. And it could be 8 months. It doesn't have to be right at 6. It could be 10 months.
Absolutely. Well, the report would be 6 to 12 months because we do want to make sure that there is enough time to do the work. Yeah.
And I think our drive for this is we want to help and we will do the work, and we're offering, and you guys are offering us a committee to do this, and we're offering our full force on it, and we just want you guys to help support us.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the passion driving that and the desire to put in the work. And I also want to make sure that you don't denigrate your own experience, because as board members and most of us, not professional educators, we don't always know all of the intricacies, which is why we have the administrators and Dr. Moshe here to help us understand exactly what the impacts of what we are suggesting to do is. So some of these things we know because we've been on the board for a while and we've already heard from them. And some of the things we're learning as we go also. So please don't denigrate your experience as just students, because you know what's going on in the schools as well as any of the adult, you know your experience as well as any of the adults here know their experience in the schools, and better than most of us on the board because you're in the schools every day. So
I too heard you say we're just kids, and I just wanted to say I'm 45 and I'm a professional environmental activist, and I still go into spaces where I'm like, how does this work? How does this jurisdiction or agency get its work done? How do I affect change? I don't know. I'm here to make it up as I go. So I think passion's a huge part of it, and then finding ways to collaborate intergenerationally, and public-private partnerships and cross-sectoral collaboration and breaking down silos. I just think we need all of it, and we need your voices. So thank you.
I also want to compliment your bravery and your tenacity for coming here, because you could have just silently taken the W and said like, oh, the board's getting a policy now. Well, cool. Now it's going to happen. But you're pushing us for speed, and I hope you apply to join this committee and use that same energy towards making it happen.
I also just want to celebrate our administrators and teachers and students who are already doing so much. I'm remembering that this building we're in is a celebrated school for its nature-based curriculum, and that we have gardens at both campuses, and that we have organic gardening curriculum for every student. So, and solar panels. So, I just want to say thank you for what you have done. Thank you for what you are doing. And thank you for being the voice of the next generation of leadership in this.
If I could share some thinking, just some observations. This is exciting because we have the Clean Buildings Act that we have to comply with, but I think that there's an opportunity with the Clean Building Act to look beyond compliance in how we meet the targets that are set for us through that act. And we're already benchmarking our energy usage in our buildings, and already we're below compliance levels in it already for 3 of our 4 buildings that we've benchmarked right now. The high school's in flux because we're doing a lot of work there. But as we benchmark over the next year, we're going to be responsible for putting together an operations and maintenance plan as well as an energy management plan. And there's timelines associated with that over the next year or 2, depending on the size of the building. So this timeline that we have over here parallels this process beautifully and allows this process to give shape to how we decide we're going to move forward in our work around energy management and resource management in our district. And I just think it ties in very concretely with the Clean Buildings Act. And I just wanted to share that because I think that's an important anchor to all of this.
thank you, Mr. Peacock. Ms. McCarl, I've made the suggested edits in the shared document, so you can just lift those up. No, for the next meeting, just so you don't have to trust to any notes. Any other comments, questions, or discussion on this?
The date is wrong.
Oh, yes, the date will have to be updated.
So this will be on your agenda for next meeting, along with an outline of the potential committee's work and makeup of the committee, and some more information on the potential audits that we could use. And along with, I think we should have the Clean Buildings Act parallel information along with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If there is nothing else, thank you all. Good night. This meeting is adjourned.